As you can see, there's a changes, dramatic changes from the US, from the Europe, and some of you might heard about Plan S, which means that most of these publication in 2021, you need to publish in open access. Now it become more accessible. That means that they want it to be like reaching out so that more people be able to refer to it, read it. So that sort of assessment is no longer just for the researcher, but also for policymaker, wider audience. The other thing, the second reason for this, sharing, I think, is all about collaboration. Research, it has to be collaborative, so you need to share it out. Otherwise, you won't invite the collaboration. And thirdly, of course, is to increase the public awareness, because a lot of this research is funded by taxpayer money. So you don't just can't produce a lot of paper. I know a lot of researchers under the pressure of publish or perish. Now, I think now is not, you no longer publish or perish. If you don't even communicate, I think you'll perish. So I think these are the three reasons.
Interesting there. I mean, a very good storyteller to start with. 3 points. People can remember that, being open, collaborate, and increase the public awareness. Now, Jane, what do you think about that? Being a researcher yourself there, why do you think it's actually important to communicate?
I think it's really important to communicate what we are doing and to tell the world that something that we can contribute to the society, the area that we're passionate about. I like what Wifo was talking about. If you don't publish, don't communicate, you perish. And that was what I was being told when I was in the academic in UK. If you don't publish 4-star, 3-star, you're dead. So I was on the go of trying to publish. But then I couldn't get published 3-star, 4-star. Then when I got into 3-star, and then I found that nobody reads. The reading, the audience was so little. Then how do I get my work, my contribution heard or seen? Then I realized communication. So because the background that I came from in terms of teaching, we're not told about communicating, is because I was in a mostly teaching university. So then I started looking at how do we communicate? How do we actually change the life of other people? How does my work change the life of the people that I intend to? So that's where I start to think about research must have some kind of contribution. And it's not about, I still remember writing, the text, the last bit, implication. I was just thinking, wow, I did a small research. How can my implication be so big? I was like, this is not relevant. This is not accurate. It's just not real. So it was there I start thinking, you see. So I think we need to communicate what is authentic, what is relevant, and what is accurate, and how we can change the life those we intend to change. So that is why we communicate and tell the story. It doesn't mean that when we do research, we save the whole world.
Fantastic. Wow, that's very specific there on why we do research. Sorry, Terence, I put you on the spot there because now you have a heavy burden there. But the thing is, you are one of the, you could actually help us to explain from the storytelling perspective, because that's where your specialty is, wiki impact. Why communicate in your point of view?
Yeah, so great points, Dr. Jin and also Dr. Wifo. Some things that I wanted to say. I mean, you guys have brilliantly mentioned it. I think that the key things also, you've also put in tons of hard work already, and the world deserves to hear it. No matter how narrow or how wide your topic is, there will be definitely someone interested to remember, to hear it out. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the point of research is to solve a problem, right? I mean, it's not to be just another paper on the shelf, and to just zoom into your specific question about storytelling. I think for me, the reason we started Wiki Impact and to bring in data to storytell data, right, is because research also shows, and we're talking about research also shows that actually our brain lights up when we hear stories. Right, when we hear stories, our body sort of produce this chemical called oxytocin. You can Google it up, right? It's a feel good, or I call it feel good, right? Chemical in our brain, right? For instance, right, when we go to the cinema, or when we can go to the cinema, right? When we watch a thriller or an action movie, how can we be sitting down, but yet our heart is beating very fast, you know, when the movie climaxes. So that's sort of like you know, what stories can actually do for us, and why we need to sort of why we need to emphasize communication as much as research. I won't say one better than the other, but it's just both. You cannot have one without the other.
Oh, wow, interesting. That shows that storytelling data. So rather than you do a storytelling research, it's well, at the end of the day is highlighting the data that you have. And I believe that because when you are doing it, you're doing your research, right? Must have some challenges there. And I'm just assuming why I keep on doing what I'm doing at this point of time. So maybe Terence, just like what you said now, maybe because of this so many you know, this feel good moment that I have with my own body, that I kept on going and doing this challenging work. Jane, because you've do this type of research, what are the challenges that you think is that researchers will have this, you know, in implementing and storytelling their research? Because Terence mentioned that you will feel good, and that's why I keep on going during this challenging time. But you must have actually experienced quite a lot of challenges there in doing this.
Oh yeah, you're right. Just so many challenges. One of them, I mean, I still remember, was the first challenge was, how do I communicate? How do I want to tell the story to other people so that the whole world know you? I've written the paper, you know, surely you know how to read, you know, that was what my concept of storytelling. I've written the paper, and then one day, I mean, when I was with you, when I was leading the PPE, I remember, and then you keep saying impact, impact, impact. And I just didn't like the word impact. Isn't that impact? I've written it in the, you know, the text. Why should I show this impact around the world? Why should I have website? Why should I have a social media team? I was like, that was 3 or 4 years ago when I Nuru, you know, was in my team, you know, in the professional practice in entrepreneurship team, and she's the impact lead, and she kept telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that. I said, what? What is impact? After all, we have done it. We're going to write text anyway. It's going to be impact. We're going to have website. That's impact. But I didn't know, so that was a challenge. The number one, the challenge was I have to work with people, not just people who write text, you know, academic who write text, but work with media professionals. That's number one. Okay. Meetings and meetings. I'm sorry, Terence. Okay, you are one of the kind of potential. Okay, so meet and sit down with them. That was a challenge. And already we have so much work. Another new, like you have to keep bounding, you know, like boundary spanner, you know, like boundary bound to be a boundary, and then work with another person and wanting to tell to the audience, the right audience, which is the funder. Hey, we have used your money effectively. So working with the professional is really, really difficult in a sense that you don't understand me, I don't. He said, you speak jargon, but can I make into layman terms? I was like, that was the first difficulty I faced. All I was know about entrepreneurship. Can you tell me entrepreneurship in a simple term? And then another one was, what is professional practice? I was having difficulty. That was the difficult part. How do you work with the media? So another difficulty was, how do you establish the story? How do you want to raise the awareness? You know, so you need to think about. And one thing I've learned is when you apply for fundings, okay, be mindful of the impact pathway. And one of them was, you know, where you want to communicate. So this is where you start to think how you want to communicate about your research. So to make your application more strong so that the funder knows that you are really sure how you want to maneuver and curate your outcome, the impact. So that is one of the challenges that I face.
Thank you there. Wilfred, would you be able to explain a little bit, because you've been supporting researchers, and I believe that sometimes they also complain to you, I can't do this, you know, this is you do that, you know. I mean, is there anything that you think that is pressing there? I'm expecting 3 things from you as well, because you've set the boundaries so high to storytell that so that people can remember.
No problem. I think the first thing I'll tell the people that who work, you know, interact with me on about research is that, particularly young researcher, I'll tell them, go home and tell your dad and mom about your research. The first reaction, I saw them like, no, wait, my dad and mom wouldn't know anything. That's the problem. If your dad and mom would know anything, that is the beginning of the problem. You had to tell them. Like I think Dr. Jane shared earlier on, no jargon. You should throw away all those jargon. Now let's talk about my research. I say my research is about Raman spectroscopy to look at composite material of the high gel spun polyethylene fibers. You get boring, right? I told my dad and mom and say, "Hey, guy, you know what, Dad? I actually studied the plane, how to make it invisible in the radar screen." They're like, "Whoa, cool, man!" That is kind of get people excited. So the second thing is that you have to learn how to water down the message into a bite-sized information. Just like you bite the apple, you're not gonna swallow the whole thing. Just bite-sized slowly. So it takes time. Take it easy. Don't try to throw everything. People are not going to digest it. And of course, I think we need a lot of practice. The third thing is to practice, practice, practice. Really, you have to practice. Find audience. Your dad, your mom, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife. Use them as guinea pig. Practice. If they keep staring at you, it's not going to work. So improve that.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I think that's what my husband and my son has been experiencing from me. Or maybe my colleagues as well. I kept on trying to tell them my work in a much more simpler term. And I think for Terence, because you kept on talking about data, what kind of challenges of getting the correct data? I know that we've mentioned about this bite size and taking it slow, but what is the challenges of getting the correct bite size? Because I think if you don't actually know what to say in the first instance, you're telling the story, but you're not telling the significant story.
That's right. So for me, one thing about, I completely agree. You need to explain it to your wife, your parents first, even your kids. I struggle in my early years, even explaining what I do to my parents, right? What more, stuff now, right? So the other thing that I always have in mind is the attention span today of a human. Apparently, it's shorter than a goldfish, which is 7 seconds. So I really like it when Dr. Wifo, you mentioned about just breaking down data. And actually, last night I was in your YouTube platform, IES, right? And I was watching 2 videos about cancer that you guys produced, and I thought, wow, that's brilliant. No one has told me anything about cancer, like how your video told me, and it was only 1 minute, and it was bite-sized for me to do it. Now, so the challenge, I would say, it's a balance. I always tell the team, it's always a dance. Sometimes we feel like, because we've done so much research, we just want to vomit out everything, right? This is what I found, and this is how all this information can change the world. But actually, what people can actually receive at that moment is only just maybe 1/10 of what you've researched on. So when we communicate also, I think that another challenge is to break it down into little pinpoints and contextualize it for your readers. I say contextualize is because every day we spend time with people almost the same wavelength with us. Right, when we do our research, we are talking left, right, center to people who are same wavelength. So we use jargons, like you guys have mentioned. But we don't realize, maybe one thing we need to do is take a holiday and talk about our research to people that have not heard us, right? So see whether it makes sense, right? So yeah, that's what I would chime in.
Do you know, Terence, I'm so sorry, but the only thing I can remember from your message was actually take a holiday.
Yeah.
So I think in a way it's true, right? Because everybody have a little only 7 seconds. That's really true. And then sometimes if you're doing a video, the first 3 seconds that matters, because
right.
that makes people to decide whether they wanted to listen to your work or not. And then that's quite important. And now anybody after this were going for a holiday, you have to talk to others about your research, right? And the challenge, that is a very, very good challenge that I'm going to give to everybody. On your next holiday, I do not know when it's going to be. You have to actually talk your research to others. And I think when we talk about, I think we discussed from what Jane mentioned and Wulfo mentioned on the bite size data, talking to to our parents. The challenges is that I just want to emphasize as me, as a human being, we have a tendency to go generic. it's easier for us to discuss about our work, to summarizing it or making it easier to digest if we go generic. But I think if I can say something, the moment that you take a step back and be generic to start with, you're losing all of those ingredients that make it exciting. And your research will then exactly be as the, you know, when they are I lost my words at this point of time. When we are actually wanted to say out loud, but our work is not really different from others the moment we actually say the same thing. So I think that's one thing that we have to remember that. So Jane, do you have anything to say here, because you unmute yourself?
Oh, did I do that? I do agree with Terence, where you need to contextualize it, because our research can be what you call it. Any research that we do have more than one stakeholder's beneficiary. So we contextualize the bite size, something relatable, okay, and then make into like what we was saying, step 1, 2, 3, 4. Make it very simple, relatable, but most important is something that is engaging. You like a story, you engage, and then you put the reader into space, wanting to be part of it. So that will make it it's contextualized, and they can apply it. Something that is, for example, the story that people ask me, what do you do, Jane? Oh, I help people to make them feel that they are rich. They add value. I make them feel that so they can be very rich, but not just rich in money, but rich in life. You add value. That's what I do. And then they ask me questions. So I kind of contextualize it. Like one example that we were doing the Buluran project. So we were helping, the native people in the middle of the Sabah, Buluran, to help them to have this entrepreneur mindset. But entrepreneur learning is a big jargon. I said, okay, I know you're having problem with kelapa sawit. I mean, the thing, you can't get good incomes. So we try to think about other ways to help you to help you with a better lifestyle for your family and for your generation, like simple income. So that's how we started. And then the next thing was, pakai smartphone. They were thinking, I never went to school. How do I use a smartphone? Even getting subject, you have to tell a story. Oh, very easy. We just teach you. We give you the phone, and then we get all the young people come and teach you. I know I speak English. My Bahasa is no good, but we get all the young people come and teach you how to do the tick, 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 tick. Just like the ATM machine, you can get information. And then your product can go around the world, and you can jual nanti kau jadi kaya, and you get a lot of information. Wow. And then they got engaged into it. That's how we got our, our, subject who wants to be part of the stakeholder, want to be part of the research. So even then we have to tell tell the story to our potential, sample that want to join. So it's very contextualized, like what Terence you said, every part of our research has to be contextualized, storytelling to win the stakeholder on board, So that's why it's so important. Yeah.
So it's like your point here is about the importance of convincing your stakeholders, particularly the beneficiaries that you're working with, right?
Yeah.
So that if they are on board, then it's much more easier to convince others to be on board on your work as well. What do you think, Wifo, about this? Is this engaging these stakeholders that it's quite challenging as well? My God, why am I saying everything is challenging? Or is it true that everything is challenging when doing this storytelling for impact?
I think to kind of like talk about challenging here, I think we just got to encourage researchers to get out of the comfort zone, because this is not something commonly done in the past. But back to the question here, the way I look at it is that, yes, we want to bite-size all these things, but you need to deliberately creating a narrative hook, to hook people. Imagine how people can watch a Game of Thrones from season 1 to season 8. That's pretty amazing, right? It's what we call cliffhanger. So typically in research, if you understand the way that we structure the publication, your why, what, and how. Why will be your thesis statement, like what you're doing, what is like, what are you doing, and how you're doing the detail. Now, you think about engaging people, you're not going to use the how, because how is way too overwhelming. What is something that you want people to know up to a certain extent? So we can't create a big why, a bigger why. I think Jane actually shared something earlier before, like saving the world. Yeah, I mean, SDG, United Nations, is kind of like saving the world. But of course, any research done in cancer, you're not going to solve that cancer, overnight. It's just like one out of like 100 or 1,000 many things that you need to solve in order to get closer. So I think we need to know how to like get people excited with the big why, and then kind of slowly bring them to the minute detail. Just like I tell my dad and mom about this whole aeroplane can disappear in the radar screen. They're like, wow, cool, tell me more. I'm like, yeah, let's go on. But come to the point that how I'm going to do it, they're like, thank you very much. Next time, not today.
So what I learned is that there's a time for everything. So you don't actually have to split everything there in one go, right? You know,
Now,
there's a
yep.
time.
Mm-hmm.
I like the cliffhanger. If you think about our research as a movie, and what will that movie be? And I think that's one thing that another challenge I'm going to give to participants. That's two. The first one, if you go for a holiday, you have to talk to the other people about your research. The second one is, if your research is a movie, what will that be? You know, and that will be a thinking point for everybody to address. That, oh, we're missing Jane here. I think she lost her internet. Terence, that's your call now, Terence, in terms of the stakeholder engagement. I want to ask you, Terence, the stakeholder thing, because I want to bring back into your statement about data storytelling, right? Storytelling data. And getting other people to actually give you the data that you require is actually challenging, right? And if you could address slightly in terms of how you manage to do that, that would be good as well, in terms of you highlighting on how we could actually engage with other stakeholders.
Yeah, so there are basically two main ways we source our data. One is data that's already been published. So this is, I'm talking from the context of Wiki Impact. So data that's already been published, and we look for credible sources, right? Those that has maybe been peer review. And so what we like to do is we basically take all your research papers. You guys are in the academia. We take it and we crunch it and we break it down and we, make into nasi lemak bungkus, like 10, 20 nasi lemak bungkus, and we then sell it, in other words, to our audience, right? That's one. The second one would be we actually build relationships with because we deal with social issues, so we build relationships with the change makers, right? Those who are on the ground, those who are on the field, those who maybe work with 2 or 3 kampongs or 1 or 2 districts, right? So we go to them and we ask them, hey, the teachers that you are supporting, or the beneficiaries that you are helping, right? How many are there? Like, for instance, a food bank recently in Kuala Lumpur provided us with a number of homeless people that they collected over the years that is currently on the streets of Malaysia, right? And that's not something I can get from the internet or get from papers. These are guys who are on ground practicing and so on. So to answer that question, that would be it. But maybe I just put another point to what Dr. Wei Fu mentioned about creating a narrative. I think the key question is basically to ask whether can a common man understand you, lah, right? Can they? Why should my research matter to you? You get what I mean? And for us, so the other day we were writing a piece about say child marriage in Malaysia, right? Child marriage in Malaysia is a very sensitive topic, right? So we produced a white paper, right? So how many people is going to read my white paper? I can tell you, maybe 1%, right? Because it has 15, 20 pages, right? Your white papers are way longer than 50 to 20. But the next thing we did was we broke that white paper down to slides, right? 20 slides, 20 pages slides, right? How many people is going to watch? Maybe 20% lah, or 10% lah, right? Out of there. But then we further even break it down to then Instagram posts, right? And we don't post everything one shot on Instagram or on Facebook. We post bit by bit, point by point, right? So sometimes the narrative, yes, like IES videos, you paint a beautiful 1-2 minute video, concise, compact. But sometimes, like even Dr. Wei Fu mentioned, time and seasons, right? Not everyone's gonna be able to regurgitate everything. So where do I get the most engagement? Obviously on Instagram and on Facebook, because there's just, a few carousels and people are just swiping and people are like, whoa, what is this? I've not heard of it. Sarawak has the highest cases. Oh, I thought, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll start commenting and engaging. So from there, then we try to push them back. Say, do you know that we have slides? Do you know that we have white paper? Right, for those of them who are interested, right, because the virality of it would happen on the social media space, right? So we try to, so it's like a push and pull kind of method, that approach that we try to have.
Interesting. That it means that different kind of medium, right?
That's
so we
right.
have to think about from our paper is the output and the mechanism to make a lot of different audiences read our work is through transforming these papers and this research into different medium. So it could be perhaps infographics, design or posters and slides that Terence mentioned, videos that Dr. Wong did and his team did. So it's like, these are different mechanisms to make your research accessible. Now that actually requires a lot of money, am I right? And it requires a lot of effort there. And Jane, I don't know, because you are experienced, I know I've seen some of the project that you've done, that you actually have a different mechanism there. How effective it was? Which one is the most effective in your point of view? And also, how did you manage to do that?
Oh yeah, it is not easy, okay? This is a life of academician wanting to play with social media. Your life is like you're playing with fire. You really, really play with fire, okay? Because we are just good with teaching, research, okay, writing paper in text. So to solve this problem, work with partners like Terence, partners like Wipo, okay? And what we did was we don't have a chance, so we partner with graphic designers who are famous in London. So it took us 6 months of planning to do that. A few meetings, and it's not cheap. It's about 2K, minimum £2,000 just to produce, So be sure that you know what you're doing. You need to publish and for what context, which audience, because we knew that we want to do something, okay, for another to get another funding. So another project, because what we did with Blue Run was a pilot, so we want to scale up. So we knew that the reason why we do these bite-sized stories, engage in a graphic designer partnership to get a bigger fund. So that a few meetings. And then we also do video, the 1 minute video. And we work with really, really professional videographer, who produce all those videos about the life that has been changed to make it more convinced to the funders. Of course, like what Terence said, nobody's going to read our, our published. We have published a few book chapters, and I was just wondering, have you read this? Have you read that? Nobody, just not interested. But they will be very interested to work up. How did you change the life of the people in Buluran? They will love. It's only 1 minute. And how do you change the life of the family? They will love it. So the videos on the YouTubes are much more interesting, more fascinated, by those like 1% who want to actually read. But of course, the funders, they want to read the white papers kind of thing, but supported by the, the social media. So of course, being an academic, I mean, I have learned so much over the last 4 years, okay? The last 4 years. First, I have to learn about how to manage social media, which I don't do it, but how do I actually engage, like what Wifu was talking about, engage with people who can actually translate our work, our work into something that is bite-sized, interesting, and relevant, at the same time authentic, that really speaks about our research, okay? And who is it intended for? That is really, really important because it can go a different way. So be careful and engage a team of social media, like what we've, Terence talking about. We have a team of people who are so good in social media. I don't have time. Until today, let me tell you, I'm still having problem with my website because I'm just not good at it. I'm just not good at it. And then we decide to hire somebody who's IT, to manage the website because we need to archive our work. We need to archive our work because we build on our expertise through our research. So we need to archive. So many things that we have to learn. Another thing that I learned is, please make sure whatever you do, you need GDPR, the consent of all stakeholders. Otherwise, breach of data, big issue. Okay, yeah. So big issue. So there's something. So we need to be like what we would say. Being a researcher, we just have to open up. Storytelling is not something our comfort zone. I'm learning it. So another thing is very important now moving on is, you know, funders want to know, hey, your research, I want you to measure the impact. I want you to measure the impact. I want to know how much I spent on you, invested in you, actually create that value. So now I'm moving on. My next level is on social value. So they want to measure it. So funders are very interested because it's a form of ROI, the return of investments. Because a lot of money spent on researcher, taxpayers' money. Look, how effective has it been? So
Yeah,
we need to
that's quite
bring this.
interesting there. Yeah, because at the end of the day, what type of data that we have to capture in our engagement with the stakeholders that can be used back into our funding application. Because I think when we talk about data collection, I just want to share as well, because I'm also in this area of arena. When we talk about data collection, there are two types of data collection. One is data collection for our research, and if you're thinking about storytelling and impact in the future, data collection to help us to address the impact, right? So when we talk about storytelling and telling everybody, I think one thing that I can say is that we don't actually, the aim have to be there. What is the purpose of that method? What is the purpose that you choose? It's not about just simply singing, just the fact that you can sing, just the fact that everybody is doing a social media, you are doing a social media just to shout out about your work. You need to know what is the purpose. And I think Dr. Wong would be able to echo that as well and highlight that, how can we actually do it better? How do we find the purpose? I mean, does that mean that every single purpose that we are doing, we have to have a different medium? What do you think about this?
Right. I think we have to be really understand the whole communication today, which is there are two big worlds here, the real world and the virtual world. And we cannot deny that the virtual world is getting more exciting because there are a lot of people access to online and connected. Now, you just start with the real world first. The real world, I think in the old day, is about conference, workshop. Now, even think about that, when you attend a conference and workshop, I have to tell you honestly, when I was a student, I fell asleep inside the conference because when the thing that they're talking about, like, gee, I know it's about polymer, I know it's about material science, but it's kind of like rocket science to me. Like, thank you very much. I cannot digest. It's just too overwhelming. The poster is very overwhelming. So I think that is an area that as a researcher, you need to think about making it more interesting. Like practicing 3-minute thesis. A 3-minute thesis is a program initiated by University of Queensland in Brisbane. And I think it's a good program. And I know like British Council, they have Fame Lab. This is some of the things that I think researchers should start looking at, one more practical thing. Now, second thing is, let's go back to the online thing. Now, online, basically, there are two big parts of it. One part is social media. I think some of you mentioned. And in fact, recently, I even heard about people use TikTok. I'm like, wow, amazing, TikTok. Some people still start in Facebook, you already TikTok. So understand the difference. Social media is more an outreaching thing. It's a pushing forward thing. And it can be very targeted if you know how to do it right. So you have to buy ad, you have to optimize and things like that. But the other thing I think some of the researchers familiar is that, and commonly they ask me, hey, I actually post my paper at ResearchGate. Don't you think that's good enough? Well, think about it. ResearchGate is just like, pasting your picture there and your paper, whole bunch of publication. People still won't come and visit, you see. Especially if you think about citation, people cite your work. People don't cite because you're handsome or beautiful. Otherwise, some researcher will have disadvantage, right? We are not in K-drama business, unfortunately. So, so you have to promote your work, don't promote your face. So I think my point here is that we all have to understand all this media, how to use it effectively. When people ask me about social media, my first question is that what is the purpose? What kind of people audience you want to target? Nothing wrong with Instagram, nothing wrong with TikTok if you know what you want to do, But don't try every of them. I mean, go crazy. So the third thing is that you want to try every of them and you cannot figure it out, outsource it, outsource to people like me and I will take care for you. So that's my three bullet thing. Yeah.
Thank you there. And I think the challenges for storytelling is that if we say that storytelling is about inciting, inciting emotions, right? The moment that we can relate to each other, and then people started to care, right? Now there's a challenge there because there's a lot of storytellers out there, right? And we do not want our researchers to just simply tell misinformation. And I think this is a question that we receive here, and I just want to address to Terence there. Taking into consideration the current increase of storytelling experts from people who spew misinformation, how can we actually make sure that our researchers are able to highlight the truth information? And I think that is our role as a researcher. If we don't do it, somebody else will, right? And we have the data and we should do it. So Terence, would you actually get some insight on that?
Yeah, so first thing, we need to be very careful with bold statements. 90% of Sabahans do not have access to the internet, for example. I'm just giving an outlier here, right? We have to be very careful with bold statements like that. And it's a very nice viral trigger for people to click on your Instagram and like and share. So that's one. Two is when we want to come up with something bold like that, we need to ensure citation and sources even on social media posts is very important. I would also go explain further on some of these key points in our captions, right? And ensure that it is not one is not fake news. Number two is not skewed a skewed thing. The other thing I would tend to do, and instead of it coming from me, I would also provide the ask. I would ask the audience instead, actually, what do you think? So instead of telling them my observation, right? Because I will have my own opinion, I would just provide them the data. For example, right? And this is a fact that nasi lemak price in Sarawak is more expensive than in the other states. The price of nasi lemak, according to the Consumer Price Index in Malaysia, is RM2.83. According in Sarawak, it's RM4.03, right? And why, right? I have tons of opinion, right? I can tell you all the reasons why, right? But I try not to, or rather I hold my tongue, especially on social media, right? But instead I push it back to the audience. Why do you think so, right? So you get all kinds of comments, and then from there you curate. What we did was we curate the comments, and then we provide our own observation with the other comments. So it's not like seen like it's like a bias coming from just one organization or one person.
That's quite interesting that, collating and relating your work with others,
That's right.
and also making sure that you hold your opinion. Because I think my role as a business engagement, so I engage with a lot of businesses, and as an academic, it's a challenging time because it's a practice aspect of it. And people always ask me, how do you do it? Why do you, what if I want to do the same and engaging with my beneficiaries and so on, what do I need to do? And I think, Tara, you make a good point there. It's about you asking questions. It's not about you going there as an expert, because what you want to be seen is actually somebody that is relatable, not somebody that is actually know-it-all, right? And I think that's one thing that you need to know. And the reason why I managed to do all of these years is as well because when I go somewhere, I listen. And I think the art of listening is missing when we are engaging, because researchers has been asked, you have to go out there, knock on the door, talk to your stakeholders, and go to conference and meet new people. Yes, that's very, very important. But if you're new, you're an early career researcher, you don't know what to do, step out of your comfort zone by going there. But that doesn't mean that you have to do a shout out, hey, I'm here. No, it's the being a presence there itself can actually help you to open your mind and then see and observe. And I think the skills of communication is all about observation and awareness and listening. Okay, Jane, do you have anything on thoughts on that?
Yeah, you were talking about being an engaged scholar. You see, the problem with being a researcher is we are so overexcited with our, hey, I got this new idea. Please listen to me first before you ask me any questions. So we want to put them into their throat. So be mindful that go there and listen to them, because remember, like what we were saying, we want to save the world. We want to change the world. So listen to them. with your this what you call it, with a nice pitch, and then they will listen to you, and then how be part of engage with you, and then you can actually train together with them using your idea, and then they will tell you very interesting story. So that means communication is both sides, like what Terence said, is both sides. So we have to learn to listen, and also we have to learn as researcher to be inside as well as outside. That means to be detached. So we are very clear in terms of data collection. Data collection. So we know how to collect data that captures the impact. So please make sure that you know how to organize your data, because now you have the data that is what you call it, 1, 2, 3, 4 numericals, but now you have data that is pictures and lots of videos and all those things. So you need very good research assistants, to help you to guide. I know you can't manage, but this is something that you have to be mindful. You really have to be up to the what you call it digitally on how to collect data. Of course, you put aside what is for impact and what is for your academic research. So these two things you need to be very clear. What is it for? Why are you collecting the data for?
Yeah, and interesting that why are you collecting the data and what it is for. So we have a few more questions here, and we can actually accept another question if you can put in the chat function there. So this one question that we have here, personalization. So it says that on social media, organization is being told that in order for you to get more shares or more likable, the message has to be personalized, right? Infographic need to be personalized, putting a human face out there. What's your thoughts on that? Any of you? I need 3 of you, that you could actually address that.
I 100% agree. Our social media posts which have faces and stories of a person gets more traction than say I put a fact about a particular issue. For example, do you know that the digital divide is etc. etc. But it doesn't mean we stop producing facts and content like that, because that is also very important. For us, it's all about creating a balance. You piece, and this can be something very powerful when you piece data and stories together. And this is really, I think, the crux of our chat today, right? Data and stories, when you marry them together, it can be something really powerful, like the YouTube videos that you guys do, plus your research paper, plus maybe slides, and plus maybe what you talk on the coffee table and everything. This can be something very powerful to communicate. So I would say yes, but at the same time I would say it doesn't mean that you need to stop producing other types of social media content, because on LinkedIn is a very different audience, mostly you and I. On Instagram you got the Gen Zs and the millennials. On Facebook you got the moms and pops, there. So it's really completely different audience.
Right. I think the personalization is definitely important. I guess it's a question of how to do it. I mean, research is a bunch of evidence, data, and the next step is really the application. So as a researcher, sometimes they've forgotten the fact that you churn out a bunch of data. What next is it? Well, what next is really people should be able to consume your data, your fact and evidence. So start to share that with application, with your experience, with how people using it becoming successful. That's how you build the story. Don't just say that I have this data, like so what, you see. And I think the best guidance usually for coaching or someone who present in elevator pitch is always say about so what. Don't just tell me so what, is it? Yeah.
Thank you there. We have a very interesting question here. Given that all of our panelists are very familiar with these UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? So how can we align our work with the UN SDG? What does it take and how can we do it? I know it's a big question there that we got from our participants. Whoever wants to go first, maybe Wifo, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. In fact, let me share some statistic here is that we actually work with a UK company called Digital Science. So they actually aggregate a bunch of online visibility data about researchers, and they actually study for the last 20 years publication of the world, and there's only 10% of the world publication for the last 20 years, they did manage to align with SDG. 90%, you can't figure out what they're trying to do in terms of SDG. Not saying the work is bad, don't get it wrong, it's just they couldn't align it using machine. Now 10% is still a big increment because earlier on, even before the launch of SDG by United Nations, it's almost like only like 1% or 2%. So the point here is that we will see a lot more of this improving over the years, coming years. Now, question is that how they're going to do it. Likely, you'll see that a lot more requirement from funder to write your paper, make alignment with impact, and basically based upon SDG category. Likely, you see publisher like Elsevier, Nature Sprinkle, requesting that when you publish a paper, you need to have plain language summary, research highlight, in addition to abstract. In some cases, they say, how about, graphical abstract? So when you think about creating all these different kind of content, you no longer can just talk about, all what you're doing, how you're doing. You have to start to share about, why you're doing this to get more alignment with bigger picture of SDG that we are talking about.
Jane, how do you do it then with alignment with SDG?
What we do is we normally look at there are quite a number of SDG alignments, and then we see what are the areas that we are looking. For example, in the Bluma project, one of them was trying to alleviate poverty. So that is one of the alignments. So we knew that we go in for this research. We knew on top of our head, like we are here to help to change the life of the beneficiaries, in terms of alleviating the poverty. And how do we do it? Through, entrepreneur link. They don't have to know, but this is what we want to achieve. So when we start writing like what Wifu is talking about, we know that when we write in our highlight, we can mention the word SDG. What are we focusing? So that's where you have the alignment. And then when you do your impact pathway, when you prepare, when you're asking for budgets, like these are the things these are the budget, you include those things that you need in order to align with the SDG. So therefore, the risk of not achieving it is lesser. So you know how to mitigate. So that means the planning stage, that means the planning, in your application to the funder, you actually have thought it through what you want to do to align with the SDG. So that's what now is looking what the funders are demanding. So with the head, and then you know what kind of data you want to collect. Again, I keep saying data, and then what kind of story you want to narrate. The story that you want to, or with the video or whatever, and for which audience. So you have planned it all this in your impact pathway when you plan.
That's exactly what SIM doing, right? Is to supporting researchers for the planning for impact and evaluating and measuring impact. Terence?
Yeah, so just a quick addition is just for us is a basis of what we do, but I'll go further to say that we don't just look at the SDG, but also the indicators, and these indicators are sort of like our markers for our work and the stories that we're trying to communicate. So when we build our stories, we also see if it aligns with the SDG, which goals indicators. I think if I just quickly add this in, we've seen so many organizations, even papers, aligning with the SDGs, but actually, to be frank, it's just a mere slap of a sticker. You just put an image there. We are aligned with the SDG. So I think that's something we really need to be careful with, and not to just because everyone is doing it, or just because it's a nice thing to have on our website and everything. But we need to really, I think, move beyond that. That's what I'll sort of summarize.
That's quite good. Thank you so much, Sharon. Because I think one thing that I can share with my mistakes is that before, when our first project, we're trying to do so many, we say that, we align with these 3 SDGs. But as years goes by, and being trained in this area, I realized that what you need is just focus. What you need is only 1 SDG and perhaps 1 indicator, like what Terence said. And this is something that I work on. Only choose 1 or 2 indicators that I can work with, because at the end of the day, it's pathway. Think about your impact as not getting the impact next day. it may, as an early career researcher, it may actually take you 5 years, 10 years, but you could actually think about the bigger picture and highlighting and choosing one indicator that you want to work with. And sometimes maybe in my point of view and my tips here is choose one indicator that you could also use when you collect your impact data. And this is what I did. I just simply choose 2 or 3 indicators that has been used by the SDG and embedded it and see, even though it's an engineering work, even though it's a science-based work, or even though it's a different, it's not directed to the beneficiary, but think about if you could actually use these indicators there. Now, to summarize, we had a very good conversation with our panelists today. 1 more minute, and I want to go to each one of the panelists there to highlight 3 key points. If you want to end this session, what are the 3 tips, 3 tips that you can actually give to our participants to take away today? So Jane, shall we start with you? 3 tips.
Okay, the first thing is be prepared, okay? And first, you want to prepare to work in partnership with people who can actually help you to produce stories if you can't do it yourself. And the second one is be the one who does the content creation, not the media professional. And then know when to publish. That means you need to have what you call it, to have a very good set of purpose of the publishing. You must have a set of purpose why you publish, okay? Using a different kind of medias, whether it's text or social media. Yep.
Thank you. Terence?
Yes. So I think firstly, as I mentioned, you provide the ask before you even share your research. Engage them. Don't go in as Mr. Know-it-all. Secondly, I think also go to platforms where your audience are. It can be, so what we do when we come up with something, we find Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups, and we post questions and engage there first before we move on. And I think maybe if I can just say this, that the last tip I would say, just do it, right? Sometimes, and there's this TEDx talk that I listened not too long ago. It's called How Your Brain Responds to Story by this lady, Karen. I forgot her last name. And I think I'm going to quote this, that she said this, right? Don't wait for the perfect story to come. Use the story that you have and make it perfect. And I think that for me really resonates because sometimes we're so scared, what if this guy say this, what if I don't get the response that I want? And at the end of the day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year pass, right? So for us at Wiki Impact, what we do just as an exercise and a regime, we post 6 times a week, right? Maybe just 1 day break. So just to make sure that we keep telling stories, and don't wait for the perfect story lah. Yeah, so that's how I summarize.
Thank you, Terence. Wishu?
The 3 tip, number 1, I think have to learn how to talk nerdy. I borrowed this from Melissa Marshall. So if some of you interested with her video, go to YouTube, type Talk Nerdy to Me by Melissa Marshall. It's a very interesting video. Watch it and you understand what I mean. So it is very well aligned with what Albert Einstein said before. If you cannot explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So prepare to do that because this is get you out of the comfort zone. Number 2, understand your audience. I think Terence said it very clearly, very important. You need to know your audience very well. Is it your dad, your mom, or another professor, or Bill Gates? Were you intimidated if you talk to Bill Gates because he reads so many books every day, right? So understand your audience. Lastly, I think just practice. Find opportunity to practice. A lot of these are skills. These are not something that you read a book tomorrow, wake up, you know how to do it. If you tell me swimming can learn by reading a book, I have nothing else to say. But this is what we need to practice, okay? Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. So as a nutshell, thank you so much, our participants today for following through till the end. And I know that you're still waiting as well from my side in terms of sharing my own tips there. So we have a summary of what Jane, Terence, and Wifo mentioned is be prepared, be your content creator, set the purpose, ask the question, go into the related platform, do it, let's talk nerdy, get to know your audience, practice. And in my case is that listen. And there's one thing that you need to learn is learn the art of listening. Even until now, I'm reading the book for January, is the art of listening, that I need to enhance my listening skills further. The second one from me is focus. And I think you cannot do everything. You should actually just focus on one audience, one task at a time. And I think when you do things, you do it well. And no, it's not about us being the perfect person, but like what we mentioned, it's all about practice. And the last one is just enjoy the journey. Because I think, you know, as all of these years that I'm talking about impact, like Jane mentioned, she hates the word impact because it put as if like it's too big mountain in front of you. But at the end of the day, it's your journey. Think about it as your journey. Impact is nothing if you know your purpose and ask yourself why. If you want one book that you want to read, maybe Simon Sinek's book, ask, you know, why. You know, that would be a good one. So with that, I hope that you found this session beneficial. 5 minutes passed because we wanted to ask the last question on the SDG, but I hope you found this session informative. And again, thank you so much for our panelists today, joining us for an hour of your time, and we hope our paths will cross again. And with that, have a lovely week, everybody. Bye.